everybody, we're back with part two with Chris Stankee of, can you pronounce your last name?
Stankee.
Stankee. Stankee. Oh my God, there's no G in there. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My apologies.
My friends
Chris
call me
Stankee
Stank.
of Stankee of Sabian Cymbals, who is, what are you again? It's
The
a big
director of
name.
artist relations.
Director of Artist Relations. So if you haven't seen part one, you have to go back to part one before you watch this video. So I will put up a link in the video so that you can actually see it. And we're also going to talk about that on blasterradio.com. Now we're going to get into some motorcycle stuff. So Chris, well, you like to ride motorcycles, and Neil Peart loved his motorcycle. Now you had followed Rush, I believe, on a tour for a while.
Well, on all the tours, starting with R30, I would ride with Neil for a couple, 2, 3 days, maybe a
Okay.
week on the road. And so that, I think the first long one was Snakes and Arrows. One of
Okay.
the, maybe the start of their second leg, I think. My family lives near the Quad Cities in Iowa, Illinois.
Okay.
So I flew out there to visit them and was going to meet them at the first date at this Moline, Illinois uh, date at the local arena, and ended up that his tech had a emergency medical procedure and couldn't make a few dates. So Michael Mossback called me on the way to the show and told me, "So you ready to tech tonight?" And I thought, yeah, just hazing the new guy, whatever, dude. So I get there, and there's Mossback up on stage, with his arm in a sling, and he's shining cymbals with the rag. And I said, well, that's odd because Neil's tech would never let anybody go near that stuff. So went up there and, well, what's going on, buddy? It's like, well, need some help tonight if you're up for it. And, went and talked to Neil. It was like, yeah, this is what we got to do if you're up for doing it. So I just called the family and told them, like, look, I'm not going to be able to hang out tonight at the show. So, sat down with Neil and went through the various things that we need to run through, mainly the electronics, because I'm not an electronic drum guy at all.
Yeah.
So they flew their expert down from Toronto to help with that, to catch any snafus that might come up. And I'd set up his kit a few times, so for different sessions and Capital and drum channels. So, I had a little experience doing that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing's labeled on Neil's kit. And as you know, it's a forest of stands up there on this riser like nobody else uses. So it was a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, but had some help from their crew, and we pulled that off. And then another 3 dates, I think, after that, up into Minnesota and Winnipeg and over to Calgary, if I remember right.
Wow.
Maybe Regina. But that was a little nerve-wracking. But so that was our first planned long ride between shows. So we went through Wisconsin into Iowa, where I tried to tell him, like, we got to be careful on the country roads in Iowa, because I know the troopers will pull you over if you're going 5 miles an
Mhm.
hour. And of course, we got pulled over and going, God, what was it? It wasn't 90, but I don't know, maybe we were going a lot over the speed limit. So I was behind him. So I pulled over, after slowing down quite a bit to let Neil take off. I'm like, all right, I'll take the hit for this one. He's going to get it. But cop pulled up next to me and is like, come on, follow me. So he went and pulled over Neil too. So we got both of us.
Yeah.
Neil's license being in Quebec. His bike was registered in Quebec. The one I was riding, his spare, was registered in California. So it was just sort of a mess of all that kind of paperwork and stuff. And this 60-year-old trooper, probably didn't know who Neil was or care. But yeah, we both got tickets that day. And that happened again in where was it? Colorado, I think, is where we were. Um, No, it was Idaho. Idaho, we got pulled over, and this time they only got me because I was
Okay.
in the back following Michael and Neil, and so yeah, he got me. But I explained to him, because the register or the insurance card wasn't on the bike or something, or the registration was in Neil's other tank bag, so didn't have any paperwork on the bike. I think I
Oh
was riding
no.
a Canadian bike that day, American guy with a California ID. And so I just, that was the only time I just had to lay it on the line. Like, I'm with Neil Peart, the drummer from Rush, played Salt Lake the night before and gone our way to, Boise or wherever. And he was like, all right.
He
Somebody at the
bought it.
dispatch must have told him or something, like, yeah, it's legit. So they let me go, thankfully. Didn't
You're
get
lucky.
impounded or stuck in, the middle of nowhere in the mountains, some tiny little police station. So, yeah,
What
that was
would have
one of a few
been
times.
what would have been your longest ride? Was there any ride that was where you guys actually took like a road trip together that didn't have anything to do with riding from one venue to another for a show? Where you actually took time out and just rode?
Oh, you know what? When we do that, it wasn't usually, he didn't go out on too many excursions when he wasn't on the road because that's what he did when he was on the road. So we would go
Okay.
out for day trips.
Okay.
Things
Yeah.
like, go up into the Santa Monica mountains or out by Santa Barbara up to 33 was one of his favorite rides, um, which is a drag because that's been closed since fire a couple of years ago. So
Oh,
haven't been
really?
able to get up on the 33, unfortunately.
Oh,
But
wow.
where he's interviewed and Beyond the Lighted Stage, that's at a one of our favorite spots where
Okay.
uh, some jokester put up a mailbox on a 20-foot tall pole, said with a sign that said air mail. So, I don't know if it's an old closed cafe or something, but they left that there, and there were picnic tables there. So that's where he was interviewed for that documentary. So that was a great ride, the 33. But now that, I mean, riding for weeks at a time on the road, we went from Vegas to Red Rocks one time, uh, MGM Theater. It's the first time I think he left after a show on the bike because we
Really?
wanted to do the good riding in Utah, which if you've ever ridden through
Okay.
there with all the parks and everything is just fantastic. So I don't know, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning outside of Vegas, pitch black, couldn't even see the lights of Vegas anymore, really. My tire exploded, picked up a bunch of nails coming out of the MGM parking lot, evidently. And we had a police escort, out down to the
Really?
highway out of MGM. So, I'm riding the highest high, like, wow, this is cool, man. Police escort following Neil. I only got one grainy picture from that whole thing. But tire exploded 90 miles north of Vegas. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning at that point, I think.
Yeah.
So he took off and I sat there, I don't know, till 4 o'clock in the morning, probably 3 hours. Friday night in Vegas, like getting a tow truck to come up from Vegas or one to come down from, is it maybe St. George, I think, in Utah. So it was a long wait there in the middle of the desert,
So that's almost like those
myself.
guys from the guys from Top Gear, where they just leave the guy
Yeah.
behind. Guy
Oh, yeah.
breaks down. All right, see
Well,
you later. We're out of here.
what good is it going to do for him to stand there on the side of the road? It's not like he left his friends. It's like, you know. But thankfully, I got back to Vegas about 5:30 in the morning, and good friend of mine uh, let me sleep on the couch for about an hour before we got up and went and go had breakfast. And it's Sunday in Vegas, and thankfully, it's probably the only place in North America that I know about that will change a motorcycle tire on a Sunday because all the desert riding those guys do out there. So I was able
Ah.
to get a new tire and be on my way by about 7:30, I think.
How long did
So,
it take you to catch up?
oh man, he was sitting down, he was finishing his dinner in Moab on the other
Wow.
side of Utah by Canyonlands
Wow.
National Park. So that was a long day. but had a well-deserved scotch by the time I got there, a little punch drunk already, you know, not much sleep, but the eyeballs kind of going like this after being jostled around all day. But,
You were
you
living
know,
the life of a rock star there for that night,
well,
sleeping on the
can't
couch.
complain
And
because that was the tour where he was having problems with his ears and skin and stuff with irritation. So he was wearing the headphones that tour, and you know, his ears were killing him. But we still, you know, rode into Red Rocks over the mountains were not easy for him, and had a
oh
doctor
no,
meet us at Red Rocks to try to, you know, fix him up. I think they tried just about everything that tour to make him
really?
more comfortable, but the dude can take it, man. He's a tough son of a bitch. He never quit. Um,
No, he didn't. Because I remember they spoke about how he had problems with his feet for a while too, and I think was it R40, I believe, and they weren't sure. He wasn't sure if he was going to, but he plowed through that anyways, and it was
yeah,
just, you know.
I
Now
think
I
that
knew
was Snakes and Arrows. It was the feet,
Snakes
but
and Arrows. That's the one. Yeah. I knew that Neil was also a mechanical guy. He was able to. I've seen a lot of pictures of him with engines apart, and he was able to, fix stuff. Like, have you guys ever had has he ever had a breakdown on the road where you saw him get all greased up and like fix his bike or
when
something?
when didn't we have a breakdown? That's the better question. Pretty much every time we went out, we had some sort of breakdown. If it wasn't me, it was him exploding a tire. I don't know, 250 miles out of Salt Lake City, I think,
Oh
coming
boy!
down from you know, Glacier and Yellowstone,
Oh my goodness!
and
Terrible place.
one of those double nails that just tore the tire up. So, you know, he tried to fix it and I tried to fix it, and there was no patching it because it was just torn in a few different directions. So there was no fixing it. So yeah, I sat there that day for, I don't know, that was probably a good 6 hour wait for
Wow.
the BMW dealer to bring a trailer up from Salt Lake, you know, 250 miles back and then back to fix. But I showed up just as they were hitting the downbeat um,
Really?
in Salt Lake City. Yeah. So that was,
Man.
but it's always a wait, you know.
But you must have, all that time in the saddle with him and in between shows and everything like that. That is just something you can't take away from yourself, right? It's a memory that's ingrained in there right now that,
Yeah.
like, do
You
you
know, and
often go back
it's
to
not the
that?
breakdowns and all that stuff that you remember as much. It's, you know,
Yeah.
that's all part of the adventure. You know, something he always said is sometimes adventures suck when you're having them.
Yeah.
And but you know, the stuff you remember is, you know, riding through Glacier and the Going to the Sun Road, you know, riding through Yellowstone at dawn, you know, getting up and riding through Utah, you know, through the fog, and then, you know, just seeing all that amazing stuff, which of course inspires you to do more on your own, and
Yeah.
inspired me to go drive the length of Baja, ride the length of Baja on my bike
Oh,
down to
wow.
Cabo, back to the Midwest to see the family a few times, you know, because riding through Utah and Colorado and it just never
Hmm.
gets old. You know, you can do that 1,000 times and not see everything, and see a different park every time.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
gonna ride an interstate, you know, I-70 through Utah is one of
Hmm.
the best, Utah and Colorado.
So if you had to bring up a memory of you riding with Neil, which one would you say was the best one that really makes you sort of smile when you think about it?
Probably through Glacier National Park.
Yeah,
You know,
eh?
yeah,
Is just the one that just makes you just rejoice in a
yeah.
sense.
Well, did it twice,
Okay.
um, which I think he asked me, you know, because there were a few of us. It wasn't just me, you know, our buddy Brian Catterson and John Wesley from Porcupine Tree, and Brian used to be the editor of Motorcyclist Magazine. You know, there were a few of us that would meet him out on the road and do that every tour just to, you know, keep things fun for him and an extra bike around, you know, when shit goes bad, which it always did, you know,
Yep.
it was good. So, you know, but the Going to the Sun Road, he asked me, like, you want to do Glacier twice? And he's like, don't answer that. I know, because it's one of the most spectacular rides in the universe, is why. So, yeah, we did that twice together.
Well, that's
Basically
pretty
three
awesome.
times because we thought we had a hotel on one side of the park and it was at the far side of the park. So after a long day of, I think we did maybe 200 miles off road in Idaho before we got all the way up to Glacier. So we're exhausted and then realized our hotel's on the wrong side of the park. So
Oh
we went,
no.
did that. But Neil, Neil being Neil had it in his head like we are going to start from dawn to the going to the sun road to see the sun up. So woke up the next morning, hauled ass to the other end of the park before the RVs got up and, the packs of Harleys that go 10 miles an hour. And Dawn headed back the direction we just come. So, yeah, I got to do that, the going to the Sun Road a few times and
That's pretty cool.
never gets old.
No way.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that Alex rode as well, but did he ever ride with you guys, or was he more of a he didn't ride much on tour, or
I've never heard that. If he did, he never rode with us.
okay, because I know there was an instant in his book where he spoke about how when Neil got into motorcycling, his wife had bought him a BMW, and that Alex had also bought a Harley. So him and Alex were learning together. They went to riding school together, and Alex passed and he didn't, and stuff like that. So there was kind of that funny story. So that's why I was wondering if Alex was, but I guess Alex never got, probably not as hardcore as Neil was on in the saddle.
Yeah, he didn't ride on tour that I know of.
No, I
But,
no.
traveling by private plane doesn't suck either.
Now, what's your favorite bike to ride now?
Probably my second generation Multistrada
Yeah, eh?
100S. Um, when everything's working right on it, all of my bikes seem to have some little issue. The way that bike was designed, the exhaust cooks the rear master cylinder. So it's a famous between us multi-strata owners know that,
Yes, yes.
it's a good thing we use 95% front brake because you're not using the other 5% because the rear brake just never works.
Never works on that bike.
Yeah. Talking a couple of buddies that I ride with now, it's like, I can't believe you can ride that bike. I'm like, what if the front brake fails? I'm like, well, there's two of them. So the
Yeah.
likelihood of that happening, but whatever. I'm used to it.
Do you ever ride sometimes and think to yourself while you're riding, thinking about Neil and somewhere you've been and you see that deja vu where you're going, Neil and I rode through this part together. Does that ever happen to you?
Of course.
Yeah. It must be very difficult sometimes to like have to digest that. Can't be easy at all. I mean,
Uh, that sort of thing is comforting and helpful more than it
yeah,
is
yeah.
traumatic.
So now I mean, I know you were there until the end and all that. Now, nowadays you're still working with a lot of artists and you're still doing a lot of what you used to do before, right? um what are you working with any new artists lately that are inspired by progressive drummers like Neil or anything? Do you know any of them, or
Oh yeah, I mean, you won't find too many rock drummers that haven't been influenced by Neil, or at least
mm-hmm.
have a respect for what he and Getty and Al accomplished. Pretty spectacular if you think about it.
Oh,
Almost
absolutely.
40-year career, 45-year career, and
Mm-hmm.
all that great music. So yeah, everybody has some respect for him.
Well, you
And
have to
you know,
do that, yeah.
so
Now,
seeing some of what he invented in some of these great new talents is that's pretty rewarding too, and something I know his daughter will appreciate at some point.
I heard that he was giving her some drum lessons and stuff like that, and he was spending a lot of time with his family before all this came down. And that was I know Getty spoke a lot about that and how he had become, a volunteer librarian at the school. And I'm not surprised, being such a book nerd that he was. I mean, what were his saddlebags filled with books?
I think he always had a book with him, I think, and his
Yeah,
journal. So
always
yeah, it
doing
was just
something, eh? Yeah.
always part of his life.
Now, one of the questions I have is pertaining to Sabian. Since the pandemic, we're getting back into Cymbals. Since the pandemic, how has your part of the business changed in what you do?
Well, the whole business has changed because, a lot of good people got laid off at all the companies in our industry,
Hmm.
and some were brought back, some weren't. A lot of the craftsmen that work at Sabian, which is, sort of way out there, not a great populace of craftsmen just sitting by waiting for, a job at Sabian. So a lot of the
I'll
cats
go.
that were there for 30 or 40 years took
Yeah.
retirement at that point in the pandemic. So when we fired back up, we had to train a lot of new talent, and that takes a long time. Um, these aren't
Yeah.
machines that you just turn on and it pops out a cymbal. There's a lot of people putting their hands on these instruments, which is why they cost so much.
Well, regardless being hand hammered or not, they're hands on. Like
Yeah,
even the mechanical hammer, you gotta be there and control everything, right? It's not.
yeah, exactly.
It's yeah. It's like me with in my shop. I just can't expect to my grinder and my welders to do everything on their own. It just doesn't happen, right? Um, so I
If you get
get
to
that.
the end of the process, if you happen to screw up at the end, doing the final lathe or final hammering or the buffing, whoever completes those final steps, they
Hmm.
might, ruin the work of 5 or 6 or a dozen people that the symbol passed through before it even got to them. So,
Yeah.
you have to put the best people at the end of the line.
Hmm.
And it's a balancing act for sure. But we have to try to, make sure we have the
Hmm.
best craftsmen,
Hmm.
which we do, to be able to, especially to be able to rebuild after the pandemic.
Yeah. So I'm an artist and I want to move over to Sabian. And I contact Sabian and say, I've got an idea. Now, are you the first point of contact when it comes to that? When an artist comes in and says, I would like Sabian to, produce something that I have an idea that I want to sound. Are you how does that work?
Well, I mean, it depends on what level they're at. I mean, we used to be able to make custom symbols for everyone to whatever recipe they wanted that we had
Hmm.
the capability to make. But that hasn't happened since the pandemic because, a lot of those folks are working on this amazing new series we have called HHX Complex, which is
Ooh,
hand hammered and HHX hammered. So there's a lot that goes into making those symbols. And to be able to offer a custom option at this point to anyone would require us to have more trained, skilled craftsmen, which of course we try to do,
yeah.
but we're, just haven't been able to refire that yet at this point. So now if somebody, is first coming to Sabian, can you make me a signature symbol? The answer is probably no.
Well, that would
Come
make sense
because you,
right now. Yeah.
yeah, come because you find what you like in our sound already.
Well, now
Uh,
you piqued my interest on something, the HHX complex. So that's something that's in the works.
it's done. It's been out for,
Oh,
carried us through the pandemic.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, because I know now you just launched a Stratus series as well,
Yeah. It's another
which I
fantastic new series. Yeah.
yeah, I haven't heard them live yet because we don't have any here where I am. We don't haven't seen any, so I'm looking forward to a one day hearing that.
Yeah.
So you right now, I mean, has your position, has your job sort of changed a little bit, or because of that?
It has changed in that, I have lost my assistant. So during the pandemic, so we have a couple wonderful new girls that are Sally Zildjian's daughters that
Oh, okay.
are working with us in artist relations, doing social media and doing interaction with the artists for their orders. So they're learning a lot, and of course we'll someday I hope run the company. And so yes, everything changes. Nothing stays the same, but it's
Yeah.
still the same great place making the same great symbols.
I'm glad to see that Sabian is, was able to survive the pandemic because it was tough. It really was. And myself as a business owner, I know I took a massive hit, and
Mhm.
that's why I got more into my drumming and music because of that. It was the only thing I could do. Shop went dead, and then I thought, well, I'm just gonna, expand my musical mind and just get into it. But in closing, I want to remind everyone that you know this segment was important because, well, Chris Stankey was here, close friend to Neil Peart, but also, well, above all, works for Sabian Cymbals. I mean, if you don't know who Sabian Cymbals are, you're gonna want to know the history of Sabian, because it is an important history, especially here in Canada, but also in the music world, because when Sabian was launched, I believe it was 1982. Um, it became it hit really hard and fast because you had the Sabian switchers where a lot of people switched over from other brands to Sabian. And so what year did you start with Sabian?
I started as an endorser, I think, in 1996, and then
Okay,
uh,
wow.
2000, 2001, I got off the road with a band and got to know the people at Sabian through my endorsement, and asked me to come work with them in Boston, which I had lived for a while. So yeah, I'll go back to Boston because I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan at that point. So it was
Okay.
nice to get back to Boston. And then it was less than a year later, they asked me to move out to LA. And I've been out here since late 2001, ever since.
Something I forgot to ask you was, are you in a band now? Do you still
Not
play?
at the moment, no. I still
No,
play, but
no.
just enough to keep my chops
What
up.
what kind of music were you playing with your band when you were out there?
Oh, no, it was rock. Be the
Just
best
straight
way to
up rock.
describe it. Yeah.
You were
Yeah.
doing well, though. If you were endorsed by Sabian, you must have been doing okay, because they don't just endorse anyone. So you must have been doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, back then there was a lot of us who, weren't playing arenas or,
Yeah.
the biggest thing I ever played was a theater or an outdoor festival. But
Hmm.
a lot of us also taught and were mentored by Dom Famularo to do clinics at the junior high and high school level
Okay.
and
Right.
collegiate level. So, he started creating a little army of us, with myself and Joe Bergamini and some other great drummers around the country. So we all had our own little territories, and we would tackle clinics in those spots. So teaching privately. So most of us had all this different stuff going on, and they saw the
Hmm.
value of endorsing players like that. So I got lucky. I was never playing arenas or anything, but I had the mentorship of Dom and some other great people to help me climb the ladder, so to speak.
So that was probably. I wonder if that was part of PASIC, if that was part of the of in the endorsement series. Was doing that. Um, Now, which line of cymbals is your favorite in the Sabian line? What do you prefer?
Oh man, that's tough to say. I like the 22-inch Legacy Ride is as much of my favorite as it is for so many of the artists. That's a favorite ride for them. The Artisan Crashes cover more of the frequency band than any other crash out
Yep.
there. So that's good and bad in the wrong situation because
Yeah.
they can bleed into every mic on
Yeah.
stage, every vocal mic, and um, but sound guys love them, especially in the studio because they can dial in and out whatever they want, and it still sounds
Yeah. Yeah.
natural
Yeah.
because all those frequencies are there. So those are really special cymbals. The Artisan Crashes, um, the 15-inch Artisan hats are, tough to beat. If I had to pick one set of cymbals, it'd be those, I think.
That would be that, eh?
Mhm.
Well, I got I'm a mix and match kind of guy. I like specific sounds for specific musics. Um my favorite hats, I would have to say, on my left, one of my main hats are opposite of you. I've got 13-inch AAX fusion hats. I just There's just something about them that I
Yeah.
love the definition. I love the chick. I love the definition. I can do triplets on them, and it's just they're very articulated, right?
Yep.
My ride, well, I spoke to Andy about this. I said, I hope you come back one day with the HH Leopard ride. I said,
Mm.
I've never had a ride that I just, it's my, that's my go-to for the ride. It's just, I don't care what anyone says, but
Yeah, if you like them dry, that's the one. But you should check out the 22-inch Paragon too for
I'm
pop.
gonna
It's
have to
got plenty of
try to get
definition.
my hands on those.
Mhm.
We haven't they're hard to find around here, but I would love to try them because I've never even heard them live. Like I've seen them in concert, but I mean, it's a concert, right? It's not the
Yeah.
same. Hearing them live is totally different. Um, well, Chris, I want to say thank you so much. This was a great interview. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for what you've done for Neil and his family, and also for what you continue to do with Sabian. I mean, this is phenomenal. I'm a massive fan of Sabian, and well,
Thanks,
big
John.
fan of Neil, obviously. But I can't thank you enough for doing this interview with me. This was phenomenal. Um, and maybe one day later we'll catch up, and maybe one day I'll make it out to Meductic when you're in that area, and we'll meet up and go for a bike ride. I would love to do that one day. Until
Sounds
then,
great, pal.
you
Appreciate
take
it.
care of yourself, and thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chris. See you
See
later.
you
Bye.
around.